Hey guys, so today I'm going to be talking about my top 5 favourite non-fiction books, because I know that non-fiction is kind of something that's hard to get into just because it's such a broad genre, and can we even call non-fiction a genre? I don't know, it's just non-fiction. So I thought I would talk about my 5 favourites. These are my 5 favourite non-fiction books that I actually own. I do have other favourites that I've talked about this year that I don't own yet because I haven't purchased them yet, but I'm not going to mention them just because it's harder to remember the books that you don't have on your shelf as opposed to the ones that you do. Also, there were like 10,000 people, not 10,000, but like probably like 8 people standing on the street outside just before, and I was like, cool, I really wanted to do my video today in front of an audience, but then they all just left, so that's good. That was lucky timing. I'm just going to go through all of these and tell you a little bit about each of them to see if it's something that you would want to pick up as well. In pulling out these 5 favorites, the thing that I noticed the most was that I think I like reading about people more than anything else. They're not all like biography style books, but I just like learning about people and how they operate and what they do and why they do the things they do. So yeah, that's kind of the overall theme of these, but yeah, I'm just gonna go through them all. So the first one is The Bling Ring. This is the movie cover. I don't know if any of you guys have seen the movie The Bling Ring or read this book, but it's about a group of teenagers in Hollywood. I think they're all from there, and they're reasonably wealthy teens from wealthier sort of families, but they ended up, it's obviously like I was just gonna say it's a true story. All of these books are non-fiction, so obviously it's a true story, but they basically got bored and decided to start robbing celebrity homes. So I think the first one they started with was Paris Hilton's, and that was the one they got caught on. I can't remember. One of the two. Yeah, they robbed Paris Hilton, Miranda Kerr, Audrina from The Hills, a whole bunch of different people. It's got some of them on the back. Lindsay Lohan as well. Yeah. So this is just really interesting to me. This is the true story. The movie is based on the true story, but based on this book. But the movie isn't entirely accurate. They've kind of changed some of the characters around and like combined a couple people into one person just to make it more appealing to watch, I guess, or like easier to tell the story. But this book is entirely non-fiction, so it's like the true story, and the author just decided to investigate this, so she interviewed a lot of the teens that were involved. Some of them, I think when she was interviewing them, they were in prison, which is pretty crazy. And yeah, it all just this is a situation that kind of escalated really quickly, so I just find that really interesting. Like, it's a little bit about that like peer pressure thing and stuff like that. It's just a pretty crazy story, and one that I found really fascinating. Yeah, this is a really good one. The second book that I will mention is Heavier Than Heaven by Charles R. Cross, and this is a biography of Kurt Cobain. If you are a Nirvana fan at all or a Kurt Cobain fan, I recommend this book. It is so good. It is the best biography that I've ever read. Charles R. Cross is like renowned for being a really good biographer, and this is no exception. I haven't actually read anything else by him, but I want to, because this is amazing. And I think the reason it's so good is that it doesn't just tell you what is common knowledge about Kurt Cobain, it goes a bit deeper than that. And I think it's because Charles Cross must be a likable guy or something, I don't know, or have like a way with people, because he spoke to so many people that were so close to Kurt in writing this book. Like, he speaks to, I'm pretty sure, like Kurt's parents. He spoke to both of them. He spoke to Courtney Love. He spoke to the other members of the band, and I just feel like often people don't have that kind of access to like close information about the person, so I think that really, really makes a difference. And this book taught me so much about Kurt and about Nirvana and about, yeah, just his whole life, I guess. It covers like from his childhood to his death and just everything that happened in between, and it's just so interesting to see how someone who has had such an impact on the world and like how things were for him, because he had a pretty tragic life, really. And yeah, so it's a very interesting and emotional kind of book, I guess. And yeah, I've read this multiple times. You can tell it's like quite beat up now because I've read it so many times and I've loaned it to so many people, but it's really, really good, and this is probably like my #1 non-fiction book of all time. The next one is a more recent find, and this is Republic by Plato. Plato is a philosopher. He was around in, I think it was like ancient Greece. This book I read I had like a philosophy assignment to do for uni, and I saw this book at Real Groovy in Auckland, and I was like, that's exactly what I need for my assignment. So I bought it and I read it, and I wasn't expecting to enjoy it. I was expecting to have to like trawl through it kind of thing, but it was actually really interesting to read. If you didn't know, it's basically his ideas about the best way to live and that kind of thing, and he has this really outlandish kind of idea called the Republic, and it's basically how he envisions how society would operate best. And I'll just tell you a little bit about that real quick because it's really interesting, and I feel like anyone who likes YA dystopian would find it really interesting, because I think that's where a lot of YA authors who write dystopian novels have possibly gotten some of their ideas from. He would say that you should have the rulers, and then you should have police, and then everybody else, so like the people who own businesses or work or whatever. And then he would have children be raised like all together as a bunch, not by their parents, just so that the rulers can pick and choose who is good enough to be a ruler, who's good enough to be in the police, and then everyone else. So that's a really interesting idea. And also the thing that struck me as like quite dystopian was the fact that Plato said that you would have to make up a lie to be able to convince society that this is just the way it is, because he thought that even though it was kind of a fair way to live, because he was like picking people based on their skills and talents and stuff, like as being the best people to rule, but at the same time he thought that people wouldn't necessarily accept that, because people might be quite bitter about being a worker if they wanted to be a ruler or whatever. So he made up this thing where you would have to tell people that it was actually in their blood, and that the gods put gold in the blood of the people who are going to be rulers, silver in the blood of the people who are going to be police, and then bronze in the blood of everyone else, and that only the rulers can tell who has which kind of blood. So if you have bronze in your blood, like hard like you're a worker, but it's just what the gods have decided. And if you go against that, if someone who has bronze in their blood ends up ruling, it'll be like the end of the world and the gods will rain down upon you and stuff like that. So I just thought that was a really interesting idea, and that's a pretty crazy concept. So yeah, as you can see, because I use this for an assignment, it's still got all of these tabs in it, which I probably need to pull out. And this was actually also one of the first books that I ended up highlighting and stuff and writing in. I just couldn't have done it any other way, because otherwise I would have had to write out all of these things. So yeah, but I really like this book. It was very interesting. The fourth book is a bit of a different one. It's The Game by Neil Strauss. This is the one out of all of these that I would say is probably closest to fiction as opposed to non-fiction. It is supposedly a non-fiction book, but I think you have to take everything that Neil Strauss says with a grain of salt, just in my opinion. It could all be true, I don't know, but it's kind of his autobiography about what happened when he got involved in a group of men who are like pickup artists. And I don't know if this is a thing you've heard of before. I hadn't really heard much about it before I read this book. This is another one that I just picked up kind of on a whim and gave it a read. Pretty much this group of guys started running seminars to teach other guys how to be more confident, and basically how to pick up women was like the end goal. So it's very, very interesting, quite misogynistic at points, but kind of clever as well, because there's a lot of like psychology to it, obviously, and it's just fascinating. So it talks from Neil's perspective, because it's his book. He talks about how he got involved in that and how it changed his life pretty much, and the like just some of the things that happened were like crazy, like outlandish Hollywood movie hangover type stories, you know what I mean? Like, it's pretty crazy. If you look up Neil Strauss, him and a bunch of the other guys mentioned in this book are actually pretty widely known. They have, you know, people have put up on YouTube videos of their seminars and stuff, and they've got like millions of views. It's pretty crazy, and they've been on like talk shows and that kind of thing. So they are a quite well-known bunch now, but this talks about when they weren't so well-known and they were just teaching guys how to be more confident. So, oh, you know what? I did not realize I've actually underlined some stuff in this book too. I did not know that I'd done that, but that's interesting. I wonder what it was. It's not something so much that I feel you would like learn anything from, but it's just interesting to me. And each of the chapters have these really ridiculous cartoony illustrations, which I thought was quite funny. Like that, they're pretty stupid. It's got people's like emails and stuff like that in it as well, so that's interesting too. And then the final one that I will mention is not as much of a fun book. It's called Sophie's Legacy by Leslie Elliott, and this I've talked about previously in a video, but I'll give you a little rundown of what it's about again. Sophie Elliott was a woman in Dunedin that got murdered by her ex-boyfriend, and Leslie Elliott is her mother, and Leslie Elliott came together with an ex-detective, I think, and they wrote this book together just to raise awareness about domestic violence, I guess. And yeah, so it goes a little bit into the justice system as well, and some of the flaws of the justice system in New Zealand. It just talks about the impact that this event had on her family's life. Some of the stuff leading up to it, like red flags, stuff like that. Very, very, very sad book, but it's very important as well, I think. So that is my top 5 non-fiction reads that I totally recommend to all of you. If you've read any of these, let me know in the comments down below, because I would love to know your thoughts on them, and if you want to check any of them out, let me know that as well. As usual, my Goodreads, Instagram and Twitter will be linked down below if you're interested in checking those out, and I will see you guys next time with my next video. Thanks for watching. Bye.